Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. We're going to have Eric Engels from Sportsnet here as well. If you're watching on Eric Engels' Twitter account, here's your chance. Anything you want to know about the Habs, any questions that you had before we head into the Stanley Cup final, he's going to be dropping in anytime here. And before we get to that, though, as we always do, we like to start the show by bringing in Ken Wiebe. Here comes Kenny. Ken, my friend, how are you doing today?
Tremendous, Sean. Great day to be teeing up the Stanley Cup final. Looks like we got a few folks in here already. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we're excited to have you. And always a great day to be talking hockey. How are things in Montreal?
Oh, they're great. They're great. Eric Engels and I went out to the Atwater Market today for lunch. He's been spoiling me. I've got a million different places I can send you to now. We had like half barbecue. We had a big barbecue platter. And then half seafood platter, so it was phenomenal. I just want to let everyone know, we love to kind of pull back the curtains and show people the behind-the-scenes stuff of TV. And you're going to see Ken drinking a lot of water here today, like you always do. But hidden away there, he's got some ice cream that he's eating too. So I know he likes to, play the role of this super healthy guy, but he's got the ice cream there. Whereas me, I just gave it away. I was eating barbecue all day, and I've been eating
23,000 steps already today, buddy.
There you go.
23,000 steps. I felt that I could allow myself a blizzard, first blizzard of the year. Summer is here.
Do not take Ken's name in vain. That's how it goes. Good. We're excited. Eric is going to be joining us. He should be here right away. But let's get started, Ken. Let's start where kind of things ended off with the Tampa Bay Lightning pulling off that. What we should expect at this point from what happens in Game 7s with that team. Another shutout for Andrei Vasilevskiy, a Lightning team that can score amongst the best of them in the playoffs, also proving that they're among the best defensive teams in the playoffs when they need to be.
No doubt about that. I think that's the misnomer about the Lightning, is that they're just this offensive juggernaut. Thought it was a great line by Chris Johnson the other day, saying they used to be the team that was the race. They would challenge you to a race to 5. Right now they can still score 5, but they're not going to allow 5 very often. So impressive job to close out that series, which was a dynamite series. And the Islanders played great. But the Lightning just do what the Lightning do. They don't lose 2 in a row. They're 13-0 now after being swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets 2 seasons ago. They've been a very resilient bunch, and they don't only produce offensively. They're a great defensive team. They've got a great goaltender, and they've got depth. So that's what makes this such an incredible series with the Montreal Canadiens, who are on an absolutely phenomenal run of their own.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about the Montreal Canadiens, let's bring in the guy who knows the Canadiens as good as anyone I know. Here comes Eric Engels. Eric, hasn't been long. We had a good lunch today. I was already telling everybody about it. But I have to say, your knowledge of the food in this town equals your knowledge of the Montreal Canadiens. It is high end. It is high as it gets. We are so happy to have you here. Want to send the news out. If anyone is interested in coming in, asking Eric a question, here's the time to do it. But let's get to it, Eric. Were you fully expecting that it was going to be Tampa Bay, even after that the Islanders forced it to 6 games? And what did you see out of them in that 7th game to close out the series?
Well, first of all, clearly I know how to eat.
Hey, we all do.
Second, I was the only person at Sportsnet that in our predictions predicted that the Lightning were going to win the Cup. So I definitely wasn't betting against them in Game 7, although I will say I was also among all of us in choosing the Maple Leafs over the Canadiens, albeit I was the only one that chose them to win in 7 games. And I will say that I wasn't standing so firm on that prediction. It was more that the Canadiens didn't give me any reason in the regular season to be able to pick them, even though I felt looking up and down their lineup that they could win that series. And, you know, just looking at the Lightning in general, like it's exactly what Ken was just talking about, and he cited Chris. But it kind of makes me think about what Corey Perry said with another Chris. He did an interview with Christine Simpson. He did an interview with me too earlier in the year. And, you look at Corey Perry and you look at the way he moves and you say, how is he still doing this at his age and the way he's doing it? And he said, last I checked, hockey's still hockey. The game is still the same. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed specifically at this time of year. And I think the Lightning and the Canadiens both represent that perfectly. They're winning with defense first. I watched the Islanders series in full. That was a defensive war, and the games that the Lightning were able to win outside of the 8-0 laugher that you have to kind of cast aside because it really didn't fit in with the rest of the series, it was because they shut things down completely defensively, and I think they've done a great job blocking shots. Ryan McDonough is kind of the leader in that department, but they can really frustrate you. And that is, the versatility of their group makes them such a dangerous, amazing team. I think they're the best team in hockey by far. And this is going to be an incredible test for the Canadiens.
Quick question here, because we want to make sure the audience is getting served here. Count Damoni was asking if you're hearing anything about Bell Center capacity. I know that I thought that was interesting that John Cooper seemed to be putting the heat on there. I loved that he did it, right? But anything that you've heard yet so far, Eric?
Nothing that people want to hear, to be honest with you. As of right now, I'm not expecting that it's going to change much. Maybe we'll see a couple more 1,000 people included, but we're not going to see a full building. And if that changes, great. Montreal is going to a green zone. Maybe I'm sure there's a lot of negotiating going on right now between the Canadians, the government. But at the end of the day, I've been saying this all along, we've taken steps forward with this pandemic to leave it behind us. We don't want to take any steps back. And so if for whatever reason it comes to pass that this doesn't change very much, we're just going to have to appreciate what it is. And I think about fans and the most passionate among them who would say, I'd give my left arm for the Canadiens to win the Stanley Cup. Well, you won't have to do that, but you might have to give up your chance to go see a game if the lottery remains exclusive to the season ticket holders and there's only X amount of people that can be there. So it sucks. I wish the building was full. Everyone wishes the building was full. But I'll tell you more than anything, I don't want to take another step back in this pandemic. I would like for us to just keep moving forward and for the numbers to keep improving, for nobody to get sick and for nobody to die. That to me is a lot more important than anything else.
Okay. I would think, Eric, what we've seen from the situation with Dominic Ducharme, in that when he first came out, he'd said that he was confident that he'd be back a little bit earlier. Turns out that's not going to happen that way. I think when we were exploring the idea of his confidence of coming back, the confidence, if I remember, and hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth, but the confidence you'd said came from the idea that the Montreal Canadiens were going to do everything they could to explore any avenue they could to see if he could come back early. But I don't know about you. I take that situation as a bit of a bellwether with the capacity in that Bell Center, in that what we learned from that situation is whether it be the Quebec government or the Canadian government, there's not going to be wavering on that front. I mean, they're going to do the right thing in this situation, how they're going to handle this from a science-based public health decision first before they get into what it looks like to have, a full building second.
I think that one, to be honest with you, is much more to do with the federal government. And I think the Bell Center thing will be much more on the provincial level. I think it was a federal issue because of the border crossing for the Canadians and all the stipulations they made to make the travel exemption for everyone involved. So I think, they stuck their guns with it. I know the Canadians were hoping to make some progress with the local authorities, but I think the federal government was really what it came down to. So it might be a bit of a separate issue. In any case, Sean, your point stands, which is that they're not going to compromise the safety or health of people. I know people are looking at the scene outside the Bell Center and saying, well, what's the difference? Well, I mean, the science tells you there's a big difference between what goes on outside and what happens inside. And managing the crowd, Sean, you've been here for a number of games now. Fans are not, when the game ends, they don't just get up and leave, right? Like they're told right. which section is allowed to leave at a time. There's a certain flow to the building within security and how you're allowed to get around the hallways. it's complicated. Like,
Yeah.
not a simple thing. I know the Bell Center is so organized to the point that they will be able to figure out a way to do it if they're allowed to fill it up. But to sit here and say, oh, it's so easy and they should just do it and it's, no problem, is ignoring the reality here.
Quick one here. Do you think Romanov makes his way back into this series?
I think it's possible. The Canadians have not been shy about using their depth. I think Tampa's a different beast than the other teams they've played. They're a faster, more skilled team than the other teams, and that's with respect to Vegas, which finished with the most points out there, and tied with the Avalanche. But Tampa has a certain speed element on all four of its lines that wasn't quite there with Vegas, and I think if you look at a guy like John Merrill, perhaps there's a possibility for Romanov to get in at some point if it doesn't work with Merrill right away. I think Merrill, though, has been playing very good hockey, very solid, sturdy. Not going to impress you with his puck movement much, but he's keeping the pucks away from the middle of the ice and moving it better than anyone gave him credit for when he came here. He was key in, I think it was Game 5, helping them get a couple of goals, those little bump passes coming out of the zone. So the Canadians are not shy to use all their guys. If they feel that Romanov gives them a chance to win and they need to make a change, they'll make it. Kulak, too, is another guy that you got to look at.
Yeah. Go on, Ken.
What about up front? I mean, some folks wondering about Evans, obviously. Tough to take out the guy who scores the series clincher, and I think Lehkonen has been just outstanding since going onto that line. Sean and I have talked about it too. I mean, as well as Jake Evans has played this year and prior to his injury, I mean, after you miss an entire, almost basically 2 rounds, it's tough to jump back up to the speed that you're going to see in the Stanley Cup final. But what do you see on that front?
Yeah, I think if Jake Evans is healthy, he becomes an option, and the more options you have, the better off you are. I don't think that he's stealing anyone's spot away, but a loss can change everything, right? Like, these stakes are so high and the margins are so thin that if you feel you need to make a change at any point, no matter how well you think the line is going, then you do it, and it's this is not about what you've done and what your pedigree is. This is about what comes next and what are you doing for me right now. And I think all the guys in that room understand that. The competition is extremely high there, and if Jake Evans, if for whatever reason, gets healthy enough to start taking contact and is ready to come back, and the Canadians are down a game or down 2, and they feel the need that they need to inject him against the speed that he brings or whatever it is, they'll do it. I don't think they'll hesitate. The good thing is that Jake Evans has proven that he's capable of being a really solid contributor, and I thought he was one of Montreal's best forwards before he got hurt. So I know it would be a huge boost to everyone if he's healthy. That's the first thing, and the second thing is if he is and they need to use him, they will not hesitate at all.
You know what I'm going to do here, because we're getting such a good contribution from our audience and asking so many questions. I'm going to just show them. I'm going to roll through them. I'm writing them down. We're going to come back to them because we got some great ones here. And the first one is from Raul from earlier on. I think this is a great way to explore the depth that exists in this series. But he was asking about a line-by-line comparison from these teams. I think it would be a phenomenal way of kind of going up and down the list of what these teams have, what they've been contributing so far. I know, Ken, you and I had our conversation on Sound On earlier on, and I had thought that the potential for the Dano line to be, I like to call them the heat-seeking missile, that you point at the best scorers on the other team, and they've been able to shut those guys down. It creates this scenario by which coaches start playing those lines more and more to get them going. And what that does is it leaves the rest of the lineup a little bit rusty, whereas the Canadians still keep rolling through their 4 lines. And I've thought it's one of the reasons that you're always running into deep teams at this stage of the game, but the Canadians' depth, I think, has done a better job of affecting the outcome of series than other teams. But I'm going to start with Ken. If you want to go and give me kind of your take on the line-by-line comparison, how this goes down, and then Eric, you pick it up after that.
Yeah, to me it's super interesting because Tampa has a similar version to the Dano line, if you will. I mean, it's not the same, obviously, but Brendan Gallagher talked about the great responsibility of going up against Kucherov, and mentioning Braden Point being one of the hottest players in hockey, and saying when his line mates aren't bad either. I mean, I thought that was pretty funny coming out of the Zooms, and very astute. But Tampa also has a version of the Danault line with Anthony Cirelli, who maybe gives you a little bit more offensively and maybe isn't quite as adept defensively as Danault, but it's interesting. And they have some similar physicality with Killorn. Or sorry, they have Killorn is with them, and then Stamkos. So I think it's a really interesting matchup there. And in terms of the fourth lines, I also think it's super interesting because Tampa has some depth there too, and a Tyler Johnson who spent most of his career as a top 6 player playing with Colton and Maroon, and then that kind of sandpapery line, the enough line as John Cooper called them, with Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman. They've got a bunch of speed and also a little bit of a physical element as well. But I love how the Canadiens match up in all those lines. I'm very curious, Eric, for your thoughts on how the matchup game will go. Because for me, like Cirelli versus Suzuki could be very similar to how Suzuki won the battle against William Karlsson's line, which was, yes, they had a couple goals, but I thought that they dominated that portion of the last series as well.
Yeah, you know what? I'm happy you brought up Tyler Johnson because I watched the last couple games of the Islander series and he was unbelievable. Like, this guy is such a dangerous player, and you look at the numbers and they don't equate to what they used to be. But don't forget who the triplets were. He was one of them. Yeah. This guy, to have that guy on your fourth line with a couple of bruisers who create the space for him. Pat Maroon is one of the more interesting players in this series to me. Ryan Reeves wasn't able to punish the Canadiens defensemen, which is a key to beating them. I wonder if Maroon will be able to play that role. There's a reason he's won a couple Stanley Cups in a row and he's going for a third. I look at the top end, the Kucherov line, you look at them and say, okay, Danault's going to be a blanket, right? Like him, Gallagher, Lehkonen, they're going to be all over those guys. They're always going to be matched up against them. The one thing that I have seen as a dynamic throughout this Canadiens playoff run is like, they're not really afraid to put Kotkaniemi's line on the ice, and they're not afraid to put Suzuki's line on the ice. And the matchups, they like to get them on home ice because they have the advantage to. But, you look at what they did against the Jets visiting. Sean made the point quite a few times while he's been in Montreal. Like, they not only were they able to get the matchups, but they were able to not really fall into the matchups that it didn't affect them that much. Josh Anderson finding his game with Paul Byron and Jesperi Kotkaniemi creates a whole new. It's the reason that they made it to the final, right? Like, that was the extra boost that they needed. The Corey Perry line with Stahl and Armia, if you put them in the right situations and positions, they're able to really do some damage in terms of wearing down the defense, which is essential. You really need to cycle guys like Hedman and McDonough and Sergachev and Chernak, and those guys move the puck so well. That's going to be a critical thing, and I honestly think this is where the rolling four lines things becomes a little dangerous against Tampa, because I don't think you want to have Stahl's line out there against Braden Point and Kucherov too often. Like, yeah, if you can get the right offensive zone situation, you don't mind it because you'll end up wearing them down in the cycle too. But the speed difference is dramatic there, and that's where you can get into a little trouble. So it's going to be interesting for Luke Richardson to manage. But, so long as they always have their top 4 defensemen up against those top 2 lines, that's going to be a key to the series too. And you brought up Killorn, Cirelli. Like, Cirelli might not be as good as Danault, but defensively, but he was also a guy who everyone considered to be a Selke candidate a year ago. And Killorn, to me, is the guy that everyone traded in the offseason when they were wondering what was going to happen. And honestly, guys, like, that guy, I am 100% certain that Alex Killorn is John Cooper's favorite player on that team. A Montreal native. He plays the game the right way all over the ice. And he's like Lehkonen, but has just more offensive upside. He's a really dangerous player for them. And I think he's amazing. This is going to be a great matchup. Like, it's going to be a great series, a much better series than anyone would have thought before the playoffs started, which is kind of the theme of this Montreal playoff run.
And Sean, I didn't forget about Yanni Gourde. I left him for you.
Yeah,
he could be the X factor in this series.
Well, and I've been talking about him because he's. Last year I thought this is this guy that no one around the league talks about until the playoffs come, and then he's a playoff god. I mean, he just affects games over and over and over again, and he never costs you. And he's right in the middle of it when there's scrums around the net. He's scoring big goals like he did last night, and I believe it was Game 5. He had a big one as well. I covered that same series, the Islanders and Tampa Bay in the bubble last year, and it just never fails to impress me just how good he is. And he's one of these guys that you constantly forget about him, but it's an explanation of the depth that this team has. I just wonder a couple things. You were talking about that fourth line and how you may not want them up against Kucherov, and I've been wondering about that, Eric. And on the surface, I think that's right. But I thought the same thing when the Canadians were playing the Jets and they were going up against Kyle Connor and Blake Wheeler. Kyle Connor has speed to burn. He may be faster than any of those players that we're talking about on that Tampa team. The one thing Montreal did really was neutralize their speed, and it's one thing they've done really well. And usually it starts in the neutral zone. When they get that neutral zone working towards their advantage and turning over pucks like we saw, that Mark Stone goal is the perfect example of how they, take guys, turn the puck over, and suddenly it's a quick strike going back the other way. And of course it's Perry that I'm talking about, who benefits from that puck and sets up the goal for Cole Caulfield. The thing about that line is, I don't think, and you made the point, if you get the right zone starts with that line, you can get them in. They end up being highly effective against top lines because they get the puck and they turn it into a rugby scrum against players that are used to freewheeling and flying. They don't want to play that game. So if that fourth line, Armia and Stahl and Perry, are able to set up and play the kind of game they want to play, it's an obvious mismatch in their favor. But I think the deal that you need to have there is that the Canadians' neutral zone needs to be working so that if they do turn over that puck, it's not a quick strike the other way. They're not heading flying down in the other direction and getting scored on. The neutral zone needs to be able to box them up, keep them in there. And guys, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Better mute yourself.
Someone keeps knocking on my door and the phone keeps on here. So
could be important.
I will be right back.
No worries, Sean.
Just to his point, Kenny, if you look back at Game 6 against Vegas, the Stahl line got a lot of defensive zone draws because they're reliable. They're smart, reliable guys. You get those guys caught in transition against the Kucherov line, you're going to be in trouble. And I think it's something they're just going to have to be a bit more careful than they were against Vegas. It's a different animal, and Tampa's so much better up the middle than Vegas was. No disrespect to that team, but these guys are the champs for a reason. You win the middle, you win the game, and that's going to be a huge matchup in the series.
Yeah, for me it's super interesting, Eric, because Tampa, I think, kind of learned its lesson early in the Islanders series, because the Islanders are they're very aggressive like the Canadians are at the defensive blue line, and we saw that Stamkos turnover in Game 1. I thought that they were kind of a little bit arrogant in terms of how they were their puck management showed a little bit of arrogance. I don't think they underestimated the Islanders. I think they forgot how good that team was at the blue line. So the thing that Montreal has done such an incredible job at is forcing those turnovers at the defensive blue line. I mean, Paul Maurice said it best. He said Montreal forces you into doing things that you don't want to do on a consistent basis. And I mean, Mark Stone is one of the most responsible players in the entire NHL, and he made a mistake that he would almost use the word never. We know it happened, but you would never think he would turn the puck over the way that he did on that third goal the other night. So I'm curious to see how Tampa handles that. They're a little bit more of a patient team, I would like to probably say, than Vegas, but can you still be patient with the way that Montreal is playing? Because Montreal kind of they force you into, being impatient, if you will.
I don't know what you guys thought watching the first period of Game 7 between New York and Tampa, but I saw Tampa forcing the play into the middle way too much, and it's funny because everyone was looking at the shot total odds, 14-6 or 14-7 or whatever it is. That period was played very much on the Islanders' terms, and that's the danger that Tampa can get into. They can try and outskill you, and I'm not saying they're not willing to do. We saw what they did in the third period where they really buckled down, and obviously the score effects had the Islanders coming at them, but the way they blocked out the middle, it was great. But the one thing Montreal does better than New York is transition. And if you feed that transition game, like Sean was talking about with Stone and the goal that Caulfield scored, you're going to be in big trouble. And I just think John Cooper is such a great coach, and he's going to have them prepared for this. And this is, I think it's going to be an incredible series. I can't wait to watch it. It's so exciting right now. It's the Stanley Cup final. Montreal's there. I think those guys are going to be pumped to come to Montreal too to play it. I've gotten to know Coop pretty well. He does love us media guys for some reason. I have so much respect for him. I think he's the man. I saw this question come in from Trevor, or it's Trevio, about, I think you're muted, Sean, but do I think Anderson is going to have a big series? Yeah, like he's obviously going to be a key. He's a key in every series and doing exactly what he's been doing all along. He's key not only in punishing the defense, getting in on the forecheck and laying a hit on everyone. He's really key in terms of rush chances. Like this is a guy that if the Canadians have an opportunity to stretch the ice, he's the guy they like to use to do it. He had 1 goal in that Tampa series going back to the sweep. I think he will have to come up with more if the Canadians are going to win.
The other part about Anderson too, Eric, that's super interesting is that because of the matchup game, they can often get out against the third pairing, right? And if you have his speed against that third pairing, even though they're still a capable third pairing for Tampa, but he could really get to the net, and he turned on those Jets a few times in this Vegas series. And then you have Paul Byron, who has just that explosiveness to go wide as well. So I think that line will be really critical. I'm super interested for your thoughts on Cole Caulfield. Obviously, we know the stage is not too big for him. He loves the stage. He loves getting involved. The verbal jousting was great to see from a young player. I mean, some people might see that as cockiness. I loved it. I love the fact that he went back at him, at Robin Lehner, and then went I only go bar down. I still went bar down on you. I mean, I love that part of his game and his elevation. What do you think it's going to mean for him in the crazy year that he's had to be able to go to the Stanley Cup final and potentially have an impact as the X factor for the Canadians?
Let me share this about Cole Caulfield. I was having a conversation with Trevor Timmins, who drafted Cole Caulfield as assistant general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. And I said, Trev, you do this psych evaluation and this mental evaluation with Dr. Scott. Wouldn't ask you to share what's in it, but how much of what you guys got in your interviews with him has been confirmed by the way he carries himself with your team? And he said, I'd have to look back at it, but I think it's probably like 100% match. This kid, you're born with it. Like you either have it or you don't. Tyler Toffoli said in the Players Tribune piece, this kid has the it factor, and that's what he's talking about. It's, that intangible winning quality that scouts wish they could pin down, and that's why they do all this different stuff with sports psychologists and meeting people at the draft. It's evolved so much over the last few years that character has vaulted up the list in terms of what they're looking for. It's hockey sense number 1, it's skill number 2, but character is somewhat kind of slated right in between those two things as what you build around, because you can have the most skilled player possible, but if he doesn't know how to make the best of it, A, that's a problem, and B, if he can't win, if he can't win with it, if he can't get to his best, wow, that's really nice to see that.
That is really nice.
Awesome, Ryan.
And going forward, Ryan, that's not necessary. That is massively appreciated. And Ryan, I recognize you from being on here all the time, and I hope you're getting something out of Kenny and Renny. And this means a ton that you would do that. That's awesome. But you don't need to do that going forward. We really much appreciate it. But yeah, our payoff is the interaction that we get to have with you fans, and we really appreciate it. But that's awesome. Thank you. You don't need to do that again. I appreciate that. Sorry, get back at it.
That's the last thing I was going to say about Caulfield. Okay, like I watched this kid play 50 games before he came to the NHL, and I was saying a lot of things about him that people were not listening to, and they just kept saying, hey, he's a sniper. He's just a sniper. He's a great shooter. He's a goal scorer. Can he play at this level? Can he handle the physicality? The number one, there's 2 key things above him being a sniper: his hockey sense, number 1, and number 2 is his character. This kid's a pure winner. Like, he just believes in himself. He's not cocky, but he's so confident and is so sure of what his ability is and how to play the game. And he's a sponge. When you listen to Dominic Ducharme and Luke Richardson talk about the fact that they'll pull him aside, show him something, and then see him apply it on the very next shift. There's not a lot of players that can make that adjustment. It's like, shanking the ball on the golf course and then making the fix while you're still playing instead of hitting the range. Like, this kid, he's got it here. And when you have it here and you have it here too, all that skill shines through the right way. I think also the last thing I'll say about Caulfield, and the reason why I believe he's not just a sniper, and this is at the heart of what makes him a special player, His ability to read transition is elite. It is above most people. The guy I compare him most to is Evgeny Malkin, and they're not comparable in terms of what they look like and how they play and all that. One of the things that I love most about Evgeny Malkin is that his ability to read transition, get himself into motion, so he's the first option out of the D to D pass, so that he can use his speed through the neutral zone and get the puck right as he's kicking into gear so that he can use his skill. That is what Caulfield is capable of doing. And some people will say, oh, he's cheating out of the zone. He's not. He is making a read as to exactly when the puck is going to get turned over, and he is gone. And he's not just gone and skating. He's skating into the exact spot you want to be in, so the defenseman doesn't have to think about where he's going to put the puck. That has been Malkin's superpower throughout his entire career, and that is what Cole Caulfield possesses that no one would really focus on. They're going to focus on the shot, the playmaking, the smart little plays with the stick. It's that little skill that he has that enables him to get the puck in the right places to take advantage of those skills that people notice.
Yeah, one other thing, Sean, sorry, I know we'll go back to Caulfield in a second. Just I want to touch on this too because we wanted to deal with it the other night. You know that Caulfield's not cocky because of what we saw with Phil Deneau, that exchange, first with the pizza and then the way Caulfield said, I'm just a little, I'm just part of it. I'm here, all the veterans have been here all year long. I'm just part of it. And Deneau puts his arm around him and says, well, you're a pretty big part of it. I mean, I love that genuine emotion that is, if you're a cocky young player, you don't get that reaction from a longtime veteran and beloved person. I mean, I was curious what you thought of that, Eric.
It's emblematic of what the team is here, right? Like, you don't make it this far without being glued together, and the Lightning certainly did it in winning the Stanley Cup. And the Canadians, who have been an underdog throughout the entire playoffs, they've had to do it with everyone. It hasn't just been one guy or this guy or that guy. Like, the only way they get here is playing as a team. And I just think their room, like, you guys could speak to this because you've been around. Like, this is my 14th year. Ken, you've probably been around longer. Sean, I'd imagine you're right there. Like, we go into the room, and we don't now because we're in this Zoom hell world that we're in. But, when, like, everyone asks us, oh, what are the guys like? What's this? I never pretend to be best friends with the players and know them so well that I could tell you inside out what's going on and what's the dynamic in their room based on me walking in after practice for 15 to 20 minutes and shooting the shit with them. Pardon my language. But there are certain – you can pick up when a team is tight. There are so many telltale signs, especially when you're guys that have made it this far in the broadcasting and journalism world. Like, we made it here because we have instincts and we know how to read people and we know how to read situations. And – you can tell when a room is a tight-knit group. And I'll tell you something, over the last couple of years, outside of this one where everyone thought the Canadians were going to take a step forward, I really believe that the Canadians were a much better team than they showed. And they finished with 96 points one year and missed the playoffs. And it was because of what I noticed in their room, right? Like, I saw it. They had a really tight group, a really good group of guys that really cared about each other and wanted to win for each other. Last year was it was so hard to understand what was going on because their group was so good. I couldn't really figure out why they couldn't get it off the tracks and play up to their potential. And this year, you just knew, even without being around them, like, the guys that they brought in, that environment is unbelievable. And so when I see something like that with Caulfield and Deneau, it's like the least surprising thing of anything that's gone on here. Like, I've known this group, I've known these guys, a lot of them for their entire careers that they've been in Montreal. And, some of them new to the team, but have still forged relationships somehow. And that is kind of the value of what we do. And I know you guys could speak to this. Like, we get to know the people and we get to know what they're about. And it's our job to do that. And if you're doing it well enough, you come to understand what the dynamic is.
One quick one, Sean. I want you to cue up that music in a second. But Eric, I thought the most interesting part of the Eric Gustafsson Zoom call the other day was when he was asked about the comparisons to Alex DeBrincat. Do you see those same things with Cole Caulfield?
Yeah, because, everyone's been comparing the two since Caulfield was drafted, right? Like, you look at a kid that scores that much and say to yourself, okay, like, what's the template in the NHL? Who's the guy? And it's DeBrincat. And I think, you see the speed, the compete level. The shooting ability, the passing ability, it's a fair comparison. Caulfield's been asked about it. He likes the comparison too. I think Caulfield is still going to be his own player, right? Like he's his own personality, his own character. I don't even know who I would compare him to be honest with you. But I might compare him to Marty St. Louis. I don't think he's as fast or as strong, but there will come a time where he will be. And one of the things that was remarkable about St. Louis' career, they don't look like, and I don't even like comparing lefties and righties, but I'm just bringing this up because I think of Marty St. Louis' career, and I think, how many times did we see this guy get blown up? Like, did it ever happen?
No.
And I think the biggest reason a guy his size doesn't get smashed around, you have to either be extremely smart, have extremely good hockey sense, or extremely fast. And St. Louis had a combination of both those things. And Caulfield, that combination is going to come in time because his speed is only going to get better. He's going to get a lot stronger. But up here, he's way, way ahead of the game. That's why he's succeeding right now.
Yeah, Waiters is right about St. Louis here. That guy was a tugboat. Like, that guy was as strong as it got for his size, no doubt. You know what? One thing that I like about the DeBrincat comparison is DeBrincat's essentially a 30-goal scorer. I was watching that game the other night, and that goal that he scores in that game is, you know, Eric, you and I, we sit beside each other when we're watching the games, and it was such a moment of just a total normal play. This guy's about to get rubbed out on the boards. It's a nothing burger play. In fact, I'm checking to see if he's going to be denied the zone entry is the first thing that you're thinking. And then all of a sudden he chips it over the stick and it's like, okay, he's in there. Now he's going to get rubbed out on the boards. And it's like, okay, he's got a little bit of speed. Maybe he's going to be able to grab onto it and hold on to possession, take it behind the net long enough for the Canadians to get a change and actually get set up in the zone and start applying some pressure to, wait a minute, he's may just have a shot on net here, to, holy crap, he's got a shoulder on the guy and he's going in alone. And then all of a sudden, boom, top corner. And that all happens. It goes from these, like, in my mind, these different stages of danger. And it happens in like the flat point, you know, like 1.5 seconds and it's done. And to me, a kid with the capabilities like that, the shot that he has, the fact that he's got Nick Suzuki feeding him the puck, and the fact that the game is easier in the regular season than it is in the postseason. I think this kid's scoring 30 goals next year in his rookie year.
I just want to say, where did that all start? It started with him reading transition, jumping up the ice, and Edmondson hitting him on the stretch. Like, that is that kid's superpower, and it's so hard to recognize because you're focused on that stuff where he chips the puck past the stick and he makes the move and puts the shoulder down and kicks it, you know, from second to fourth gear and pops it into the top of the net. And yeah, DeBrincat was a 40-goal scorer, absolutely. I see Caulfield as a 40-40 guy, like at his top end. I really think that. I don't think 50's out of the question one day. I don't want to heap all that onto him, but honestly, like, I've been saying since the start that the minute this kid, the time that this kid plays a full season in the NHL, his first full year in the NHL, because this isn't it, he's going to score a minimum 24 goals. Like, that's in the bank. And he will probably be a perennial 30 to 40 goal scorer for years to come. But I can't get over that one skill, like that one skill that he has, where he's not cheating it. He's making a read that's the right read, like 9 times out of 10, and using what he has to be able to take advantage of his best skills. And that's just you can't teach that stuff. Like, it's the same stuff you can't that you look at and say is a cerebral, smart, talented player. Like, and those two as a combination is, Canadians fans should be drooling over that. Like, that's going to be so much fun for years to come. 21 and 21, like, wow, 20 years old Caulfield. I mean,
yeah. And Kotkaniemi there. I mean, 2 centers that are growing into this and doing amazing things. I will say this: there's a lot of that you can't teach. But the more I look at this, the more I look at the situation of. We talk so much about Matt Barzal and how Barry Trotz, he walked into the league as a point per game player, and Barry Trotz has since kind of broken him down and tried to turn him into this winner, this ultimate competitor who's effective outside of just rolling in points. And you can see it in his post game comments. I mean, there's nothing Matt Barzal wants to do more than win. win. It tears them apart. I think that this is a perfect fit for me. Cole Caulfield and the Montreal Canadiens and Dom Ducharme's coaching staff is a perfect fit because, to your point, Eric, there was a point in the series I faulted Cole Caulfield for the game-tying goal in Game 4, and I thought for the rest of that game, and I'd said that to you, that he was taking shots that were, rather than holding on to possession, he was taking long shots and they were rolling out, because that's what happens when you're a young kid. You make a mistake and you want to go make up that mistake, and that's not the right thing to do. You got to stay within your structure. After that game and after that error, he never left his structure for the next couple of games, but he scored, which means he's a young enough kid who's able to your point, learning on the fly. They're showing him stuff it's like slicing it in the bush and you're figuring it out right the next time you're on the tee. He figured that out and got huge goals in the next 2 games, Game 5 and Game 6. I think this is the perfect marriage of a kid who's got amazing skill, a coaching staff who knows how to make him defensively responsible, but at the same time recognizes what he can do and frees him up enough offensively to make a difference. I'm fascinated to see how he's going to do in this Tampa series, because I think this is going to be the hardest challenge of his life. Everything that's been put in front of him so far, he's responded well. That's going to be interesting to see how he responds to this. Eric, I wanted to get something we talked about that you'll see if you go check out our chat, either online and in our Sportsnet news show tonight. We talked about the power play and the penalty kill. That is something that is fascinating to talk about, because the Tampa Bay Lightning's power play is the best power play in the playoffs. And for my money, I don't care what regular season results are, this is the best power play in the NHL. I think that in every single spot, I was saying this to Ken earlier today, on every single spot on that power play, you may have the best guy in the league at each position. Steve Stamkos with his one-timer, Kucherov as the quarterback, who also has a phenomenal one-timer, Hedman, who may be the best offensive defenseman from the point, Braden Point, who at the very least in the playoffs is the best inside guy, and Killorn, who you talked about before, is just a beast in front of that net. But you're running into a Montreal Canadiens power play, which right now, based on its percentage, is the most successful penalty kill in Stanley Cup playoff history. How do you see this tug of war between the power play and the penalty kill shaking down?
Well, I'd love to hear what Ken thinks before I share my comments, to be honest.
All right, Kenny.
I love the pressure element. I think that the Canadians are doing the best job of finding pressure points in the opposition power play. I do think that the Lightning power play is so dangerous that I think it will be incredibly tough for the Canadians to keep up this crazy pace that they're on. I haven't given up a goal in weeks on the penalty kill, but I do think they match up well. I think their ability to get in lanes, and I do think that the Canadians have the best defense core at both shot blocking and also the clearing out of the front, which is such a crucial element. Price is reading the play so well. You would never say that it diminishes the impact of a one-timer, but Price's ability to A, read the one-timer, and B, push post to post is going to make it incredibly challenging for the Lightning power play. But I think Corey Perry said it best. I think that the discipline factor will be critical for Montreal. They cannot take nearly as many penalties as they did against Vegas and expect to survive that match, even though I do think they match up pretty well.
So as a reporter, have you ever asked someone what goes into chemistry? We always talk about this guy having chemistry with that guy. What's a tangible example of what chemistry is? I'm sure you have. I know I have. Let me explain chemistry as I see it. Watch Tampa's power play. And it's not just that what Sean said, that they've got the right guys in the right places and everyone all over the place in the right place. Watch somebody feed Kucherov or Stamkos for a one-timer and watch what the other guy does. So if you feed Stamkos for a one-timer or you feed Kucherov for a one-timer, watch what Stamkos does and watch what Kucherov does on the other side. So pass comes over to Stamkos for a one-timer. Where does Kucherov go? He fades to the boards right away because he knows that Stamkos is not shooting to get it on net. He's shooting to score. And if he misses, it's going to be a rim around. It's going to get out. So that is chemistry. And chemistry to me is what's happening on the Canadiens penalty kill. there is a read and react situation here. The penalty kill, when it's effective, whether it's Montreal or at Winnipeg or any other team you want to point at, it's because everyone knows what the other guy is going to do. Everyone knows exactly what everyone reacts perfectly off the read, right? Like, so Paul Byron and Arturi Lehkonen as a pair, or Yoel Armia and Philip Deneau, or whatever, mix those guys. I think it's Deneau with Lehkonen actually, and Byron with Armia. Like, Armia knows exactly when Byron is going to jump to a loose puck, and he knows exactly where to go for the support angle. And, like, it's really going to be a question of which chemistry prevails. And Tampa's chemistry on the power play is what makes it work. It's not just that they have the best guys in the best positions. That chemistry is unbelievable. And I just think it is one of the most fascinating, compelling things. Corey Perry's right. You give that Tampa power play reps, you're going to be in huge trouble. So, yes, I'm giving chemistry lessons. Drink water. I don't know what to tell you. I got to hydrate. I ate a lot today at the market with Sean.
It's a compliment. It's a compliment.
Yeah. But no, I'm just joking around. I'm rolling with the punches too. But yeah, that is the thing that stands out to me about Tampa's power play. Like, everyone talks, they've got the weapons. Like, no, it's that they know exactly what each other's going to do all over the ice. And when I see it, watch next time you see one of Kucherov or Stamkos get a one-timer opportunity, watch what the other guy does.
Yeah.
That is what makes that thing work.
Another thing, and I've always liked to talk about this, think of it like a 1-3-1, right? You've got one guy in front of the net, three guys stacked across the middle, a guy on each boards, and one guy in the middle in the slot, and then the defenseman that's up top. What I've always thought about this, because the Capitals run the same power play, the Winnipeg Jets run the same power play. It's the power play that you run if you've got a trigger man who can blow a one-timer past the goalie. This is what you set up if you have that weapon. The Jets went away from it a little bit this year because they didn't have Patrick Laine anymore. I would fully expect that the Columbus Blue Jackets, if they can figure out some other personnel, and if Patrick Laine stays there, which I have doubts about, but they would go to that, because when you've got that weapon, that's what you do. But what I see different in how Tampa works this is they've got this kind of strange shell game type movement that they play in between those three players, where Braden Point, rather than staying in the middle, will kind of move toward, he'll get the puck and he'll move towards Kucherov, or same thing, Kucherov will get the puck and he'll move into the middle towards him and kind of force those defenders into a kind of a zone situation where they're like, well, it confuses which of these two guys do I take? And as soon as they switch off and go to the wrong guy, that's when that puck goes through. So not only is it chemistry, not only is that it's the right guy, not only is it that the coaching is phenomenal and has them set up to succeed, but they've got this dynamic element to that power play that I don't think any of those other power plays have, and it makes them very, very hard to defend against. I think one of the things the Canadians have done so well in killing their penalties is the zone denials. You don't really get set up that often, and then when you do kind of give up that puck, they're better at fighting to get to that loose puck and throwing it out, and then once it's out, it doesn't get back. And that's going to get really, really important down the stretch here. I know that when you watched New York, Matt Barzal was the guy who was just always entering the zone. He's a zone entry in a can. I'm not sure who that guy is for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Maybe it's all of them, but that to me needs to be the plan. If you're the Montreal Canadiens, they need to be really aggressive on their zone denials, because I do think there was a couple times in that series where the Golden Knights set up and had a little bit of possession and moved the puck around, and were getting those shots from the point because they took what was given to them, and that's what they felt was given to them, were those shots from the point. And give them credit, they generated a lot of offense from their defense in that series, but I don't think that you are going to limit the Tampa Bay Lightning to shots just from that point. If they get set up on you, they're going to find those seams. Braden Point's going to get his shots from the slot. Steve Stamkos is going to get his one-timers. Kucherov is going to do his thing.
Yeah, when you have five shooting threats on the ice, you're going to get your chances.
And the other part too, Sean, to your point, nobody's better in the NHL at improvisation, right? They already have the best structure, they already have that great chemistry, but then their ability to improvise because they have the creative minds like Kucherov and Point. That to me is what makes them so dynamic. One other quick one, sorry to shift gears, Eric. We got to talk about the goalies. I mean, to me, Carey Price will never say it's important to him, but I mean, he's putting together a pretty good list of guys that he's outplayed so far. And what do you talk about getting to know guys? What do you think deep down Carey is thinking, where everyone in the NHL is saying Vasilevsky is the best goalie? He's kind of taken the mantle that Price has had previously. And before I let you answer, I said this the other night, but how great is it that Carey Price just had one of his best moments of his NHL career, and he's shouting out his mother for getting reelected as chief. That is just absolutely dynamite. I loved it.
One of the things I've learned, I loved it too, Ken, and one of the things I've learned about Carey Price, there's no mystery there with that guy. Like, what he shows you is what he is. And he might be a little bit more subdued in the media interactions with the cameras rolling. Fortunately, covering him for 14 years, we were both rookies at the same time. I had a few private conversations with the guy. He's just a nice, respectful guy. But when he gives you an answer, it really is what he means, and I don't think the Vasilevsky thing and what people say about who the best goaltender in the world is, or Hellebuck or Fleury or whoever you want to pick, I don't think he cares at all about it. I think he purposely doesn't. Like, he always says the only thing he cares about is the next shot. And I really do believe that. That is the mentality that enables him to play the way he does. And I just think I'm happy for Carey. Like, for him to be playing his very best, but for it not having to come down to him every game he plays is a really nice kind of harmony type of situation that hasn't been there throughout his career. Because you look back since 2015, I mean, go look on HockeyDB at what his save percentages were in the playoffs. I mean, they went to New York in 2017. He had a .936 save percentage and ended up losing in less than 7 games. I mean, go figure. Like, that guy puts up those numbers, you figure you're winning in less than 7, not losing in less than 7. The Canadiens scored 11 goals in that series, and they looked like they were on their way to doing that against Toronto and bowing out of these playoffs while he was playing out of his mind well. So I think it's great that there's a team thing going on here, and I think he's feeding off of that. And I don't think he cares who's across from him. The only thing he cares about is the goal that he set, which is to win the Stanley Cup. He doesn't want to be on that list, right? He doesn't want to be on the list of guys that will go down as first ballot Hall of Famers who never won the Cup. He doesn't want that. This has been his ambition. A couple of years ago, talked about not wanting to wait through a reset or a rebuild or whatever you want to call it to see it happen, and just wanting to have opportunities to win. And last year, with a team that was infinitely worse than this one, they got an opportunity to go to the playoffs, and he took them past Pittsburgh right away in a way that, like, that was more surprising than anything they've done this year, I think. And the guys, that's the reason he is as good as he is. He doesn't get bogged down in the distraction, the sidebar narrative, or whatever it is. He gets, his only focus is stopping the next puck.
Matt Schaub, I don't know if you're joking or not. We've been answering questions this whole time. We've been trying to tackle everything. If you've got a question you feel we haven't answered, just throw it up there again. We'll try and make sure that we get to it. I thought, so one of the things people were asking about, talking about getting to questions earlier on, someone had asked about the Kucherov and Hedman injuries and also the Petrie and Weber injuries. Where do you think they are with that? I know when we were out for lunch today, it popped up with Kucherov. You didn't think he had his best game last night or looked overly comfortable. Do you expect with Kucherov, Hedman, Petrie, or Weber, their injuries to play any kind of role in this series?
Well, the speculation, which I think is probably pretty well informed, that Kucherov has a rib injury. Like, if you've ever had a rib injury, and forget about if you've ever had bruised ribs, forget about cracked ribs, breathing isn't easy. Like, so going to play hockey, which is start-stop cardio, and at that level, that's not fun. He looked tight. I'm not saying he looked bad. He looked tight. Like, he looked like he didn't have that liberal motion about him that we know is what makes him such a dangerous player. And we'll see how that plays. We'll see what a couple days of rest is huge at this time of year. Petrie's an interesting one. Like, I dislocated these four fingers one summer. I was playing street hockey and on rollerblades, and there was sand on the street, and I slipped and was still holding my stick, and my stick went up like this, and I dislocated all these fingers and had to have them reset, which was a horrific thing. And I was supposed to be in a cast for 4 weeks, and I was 15 years old and playing sports with it, and ended up breaking the cast. And it was painful at first, like using my right hand to do things, but the more and more I used it, the better it started feeling. So I'm starting to wonder if hello to Thailand also. I'm starting to wonder if Petrie is feeling better and better actually playing with that injury than he would be if he was just sitting, resting, waiting for it to heal. I wonder if all that movement in there has helped him. As far as Weber's concerned, like he tore up his left thumb, like he tore stuff in there that is going to require surgery, I'm pretty sure. And that's going to be tough. I love the facial reactions from you guys to these comments. You guys are hysterical.
Sometimes we're just trying to keep them involved, but there's questions, but there's 20 questions, right? And we can only do one at a time. So we try to handle what we can.
Weber's been playing with like brutal injuries for years now. And when it comes to like the toughest game, like, look at how good Weber has been. Look how good he's been in these playoffs. I know he's only got one goal. I get it. You want to see a shot hit the net, and that's what he's been doing his whole, like, he has been an absolute animal out there. He's terrifying to play against, and I think he's unbelievable. He's leading the team in ice time, obviously, with Ben Sherratt, and he's playing just like in the bubble last year. I think he's been one of the best players in the playoffs, not just for the Canadiens, but in general.
Matt, I was asking about Tatar. I don't think the Canadiens are going to outscore the Lightning, so I don't see Tatar. Tatar is, like, I'm with you, Eric. I think everyone is available, and if he came in, he could do an effective job. But I don't think that the Canadiens are looking at trying to outscore the Lightning. They're going to have to win the way that they've been winning so far, don't you?
Well, I think if you go through the first two games and you score one goal, Tatar's a guy you got to look at, right? I don't think he's out of the mix. He's working hard at practice. He's got a great attitude. I think you guys are seeing it. If you see the videos, he's the first guy greeting the team after the wins, and he's happy and excited. This question coming in about Anderson, this guy, you don't play the game the way he plays it without having a few nicks and scratches and bumps and bruises, but seems off. I don't think so.
I don't agree. Yeah.
Like, the last 3 games, he was just a freight train. He's an animal. He had 10 hits in one of them, I think. Like, 10 hits in a playoff game is – think about how well you have to track down people to get 10 hits in a playoff game. Like, the puck doesn't really get around you. But before that, I think a lot of people were wondering if he was hurt because he wasn't playing as effectively. I think he just needed someone to give him a little knock, and Dominic Ducharme provided it after Game 1 of the Vegas series, saying that we need our third line to be more consistent. And Josh Anderson was asked about their performance in general, and I guess they heard it. Like, whatever log got thrown onto the fire there, it ignited it.
Quick one here. Obviously, Sean and I have know Ben Sherratt from covering him a little bit too. Can you describe the impact? I mean, a lot of people think Montreal. He went to Montreal and played great because he played with Shea Weber. Obviously, playing with Shea Weber is going to help. But how would you quantify the impact that Ben Sherratt has had on the Montreal Canadiens defense core?
I kind of want to go back in time with Ben Sherratt, who is, if I had to rank players who I enjoy being around in the NHL, he's in my top 5. Like,
Great guy.
Like this guy. He's just phenomenal. And I've got a lot of time for him just because I think he appreciates and respects the way I see the game. And from the conversations we've had, it's been really great getting to know Ben. And one of the reasons why I think we formed that kind of connection is that his first 3 games in Montreal, he really struggled, going back to last year after he signed the deal. And I want to go even further back from that. He came to Montreal, and people were saying he's the next Carl Alsner, which I thought was ridiculous. If you'd ever watched Ben Sherratt play, then you know nothing about him if you're saying he was the next Carl Alzner. And that's, first of all, Carl Alzner was a really good player before he came to Montreal, and unfortunately couldn't keep up. But at the foundation of Ben Sherratt's game is that he's a really, really good skater, and not a really, really good skater for his size. Like, he is an elite level skater. So the first time I saw him was at the informal kind of workouts in August leading up to training camp, and I walked into the Brossard complex, their training facility, and saw him skate for 5 minutes and was like, this guy's going to be one of the best skaters on the back end. Like, his skating is incredible. So I don't know what people were saying about him. Now, 3 games into his Montreal career, he is hearing it left, right, and center. People are freaking out on him, and it's coming back to him too. And he's getting asked by every media member and this and that. And I sit down in the locker room and I go, I have a question for you about your system in Winnipeg, because you guys were built so differently than this Montreal team, which is speedy and skilled and this and that. Where did they want your first outlet pass going in Winnipeg? And he said, always the wall. He said, we had huge guys in Winnipeg, so the first outlet first look out of the zone is always wall, because we'll win the wall battle and just get out. I said, okay, so this is the problem. This is why everyone's all over you, because you're doing something that's muscle memory for you for 6 years. You're looking at the wall, where Claude Julien's system is your first look is to the middle. Your first look is to the middle. So he had to undo that muscle memory. And I wrote an article about 3 games into the season last year, and I said, here's how Ben Sherratt intends to adapt and play fast. That was like the title of the article. And I talked about how he had to untrain that muscle memory from his first look being to the wall to moving it to the middle, and that his skating ability would get him to the right places. And then he had a career year. And that's kind of where he and I built this kind of relationship, where he was like, okay, this guy actually took the time to understand why, like, I just needed a few games. He also told me at the time that he's traditionally a slow starter. Like, every year, the first few games, he's a slow starter. So I have so much time for this guy, and getting to know him and what kind of person he is. And I talked a lot with him during the pandemic when the first break happened. And he gave me a one-on-one interview that we ran on Sportsnet, where he said unbelievable things about the Canadiens organization, his experience. Like, this guy, it's so easy to see what his value is to the team. And I will say this about the way he has played in the playoffs. Guys are absolutely terrified of him on the ice. They are scared of him. He is a scary human being. If you get within his 6-foot radius of his wingspan, he is going to hurt you. And he is going to hurt you in front of the net. He is going to hurt you in the corners. He is going to hurt you all over the place. And I'm telling you, go watch the Philadelphia series from last year. And that was the value of being in the bubble. Like, I got to see him every time Sean Couturier was in his vicinity. He either punched him in the head or cross-checked him. Every time, and we're seeing it in these playoffs, right? Like, you don't see it because the puck goes out of the zone and the cameras are following the puck. The stuff this guy does, there are so few defensemen in the NHL that are like this, and the Canadiens have 3 of them, and Petry's a pretty physical guy too. But, like, between Edmondson, Sherratt, Weber, I promise you, if you speak to the guys who have played against these guys, they want nothing to do with those guys.
Yeah. None of them met a cross check they didn't like to deliver, right? But they still have the skill. I love that about them, and even too, like, he's a Manitoba
hold on. What
guy.
did Luke Richardson say? He said it's like playing 4 Chris Prongers, right? And who liked playing against Chris Pronger? Nobody. Yeah. Sorry, Ken. Keep going.
You guys know Sherratt so well. Like, I know you know. First of all, Kenny, you're a big reason why I was able to create a relationship with Ben, because you gave me his information when he came here and made sure that, like, we connected. Like, you guys got to know this guy too. Like, what's in here and here. I mean, the guy's just a great guy.
And he had to earn it. That's the other part about Ben Sherratt's story that's so fantastic. I mean, at one point, he got stuck on the depth chart where he had to spend a little bit of time in that East Coast League, ECHL, before he got his chance to be a star with the St. John's Ice Caps and, help that team reach the Calder Cup final. And yeah, you're right. He was just an incredible human being, and he plays the game the right way, and he appreciates it. I love this about Ben Sherratt. When he was just about to become an unrestricted free agent, he didn't go out and say, I want to go to the place who pays me the most money. He said, I want to play for a Canadian team where hockey matters. And, that experience for him has been fantastic. I think it's been awesome. And one thing I want to shift quickly to, Eric, as you've written about this, 1993, the comparison is obvious, but what is it that reminds you most of those two groupings, and why? And also shout out to the Stéphane Lebeau reference in your column the other day. That was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I the only reference that I have made to 93 throughout this entire run, by the way, was just to point out that the Canadians have not had a center line since then that was like that. And I really do believe this is their own thing. Like, this is this group's time. They're writing their own story. Dom Ducharme has been asked a number of times about 93, and I like that he said, we want to write our own story, and they are. I mean, like, they're writing their own story in a way. The 93 team, for what they pulled together and surprising people and all that, and they were – the way they did it, there's another comparison to be made because they played truly as a team and they had a great goaltender behind them, but they did not face half the adversity that this group did throughout the year. Like, this story – and yeah, I have no problem saying it right now, guys. Like, if they win the cup, I'll get to work immediately on a book. I'm going to tell the story of this season one way or another when the time comes, and I'm looking forward to doing it in both languages. I just think the story of this team needs to be told, and it was a real shame not to be able to chronicle it as up close as I would have liked to have been, because the stories I think I could have unearthed talking to the guys about what they were going through throughout the year. Like, I think it's going to be a great book one day, and I'm looking forward to writing it. It's going to be a big responsibility on top of everything else that I do and that we do. But, like, guys, like, I just think, like, the 93 thing is 93, and this is a whole different animal.
Before we go on, since Kenny cut me off, such a jerk move, Ken. I want to tell one last story about Ben Sherratt, just because it works so well with what Eric's saying about how afraid people are of him on the ice. My favorite story that Ben Sherratt ever told me, and I told it on Hockey Night in Canada. His grandfather was a CFL football player, played for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And he said one of the things he struggled with growing up and playing hockey is hockey started. I mean, he started off at his age being that, like, having that perfect body for hockey, but then hockey started changing, right? We go to smaller players, like that. Cole Caulfield's not playing in this league probably 15 years ago, right? And so as that transition is happening, Ben Sherratt has this physique that is like, he's got this great physique. He'd be a great football player. You can see he comes from football player lineage. He tells me that there is like nothing that he eats that doesn't turn into muscle. Like, he could go and have 20 peanut butter and honey sandwiches and a bag of marshmallows and eat Fruit Loops for breakfast every morning, and he'll gain 10, 15 pounds of muscle. Lou DeBrusque told me he was the exact same way. He said there was nothing that he couldn't eat that wouldn't turn into shredded muscle. And so Ben Sherratt told me the interesting part for him is when he's not playing hockey during the regular season, and when it's the off season, he's borderline starving himself, because otherwise he just gets bulkier and bulkier and more muscular. And then by the time training camp comes around, he's struggling to keep up because he's too heavy out on the ice. So this is a guy who's naturally, his body is designed to get big and strong and be punishing. And that's why when he's out on the ice, he's as punishing as he is. I wanted to go in this direction because I love the Luke Richardson for Clydesdale's comment. I love him describing them as a bunch of Chris Prongers. I think based on the Canadians' ability to shut things down, and Tampa, as we saw, their ability to shut things down when they need to, those goals that, and I think it was Brendan Gallagher said today, no cheap goals, no giveaways. That's what they can't have in the series, right? Like what we saw last night when Yanni Gourde scored. That was the difference in the most crucial game of that series. Far too much ice for that player. The four Clydesdales have been able to keep everybody kind of out of that area, but that area is exactly where Braden Point makes his living and has, created one of the greatest scoring streaks we've seen in Stanley Cup playoff history. Is this Canadians' big four going to be able to keep that area clean against this team and against a player like Braden Point, who has a magician's ability to get in there, find space, and score from that area?
if they're not, Carey Price is a bit of a better goaltender than what they faced in the Islanders. And you know what? That came
which was brought up in our chat room, that the Canadians have faced really good goaltenders, not so much for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Go on. Sorry.
Like, the Islanders series with Tampa turned into a one-shot series. It literally turned into a one-shot series. It was a 7-game series that ended on one shot. Like, the Islanders were right there with them. They had the ability to win it. It looked as though they were going to be honest with you. And I think one of the reasons is that you have Mayfield and you have Pellick and you have Pullock. Those guys did a great job in the middle of the ice because, like, Braden Point's going to get chances, and so is Kucherov, and so is Palat, and so is Stamkos. Like, those guys are going to get their chances. It's impossible to keep them completely in check. Where they get them from is somewhat in your control, but those guys are so good. Like, and the difference being is that the depth of the lineup enables them to do it. They come at you in waves. They have 4 lines that are good enough, and in the middle of the ice is where they really do excel versus, say, Las Vegas or even Winnipeg to that degree, especially with Scheifele out, and even Toronto because Tavares went down. So that is going to be a big element of this situation here. I will say this, though, like, we are talking about a Canadians team that in the regular season was the only one in the country to hold McDavid in check and Draisaitl. And they played on different lines basically every time they played against them. And it's because of those 4 guys. Those 4 guys on D, when you add in Lehkonen and Deneau and Gallagher on the other side of them, like, it's hard to get through, but it's not just them. Like, every line plays responsibly on this team. Like, do you really distrust Nick Suzuki defensively? Not really.
No.
Kotkaniemi has proven to be a very good two-way player, but he's playing with Paul Byron, who's one of the best two-way players you could find, and Josh Anderson, who makes it a nightmare out there. Now, those guys are not quite as good in the defensive zone, but their back pressure and their forechecking is key. So it's going to be hard, Sean. Like, Braden Point to me is that guy is like on a team of Canadians at the Olympics where you would have to say to yourself, is McDavid going to play 25 minutes, McKinnon 25 minutes? Like, I'm playing Braden Point more minutes than anyone. I'm probably playing him with those 2 guys, but I'm playing him above everyone. Like, he's my top forward. I think people mistook me when I tweeted that the other day. I think they thought I meant that, like, he's one of the top guys on. No, like, he's the guy. He is the best player on this team. Like, so, but Braden Point isn't doing what Braden Point is doing without the depth of the Lightning providing him the opportunity to do the damage when he gets out there. If it was a one-line team, they'd be easy to shut down. And the Canadians have done a good job shutting things down, and it's not just the 4 guys and Phil Deneau and Arturi Lehkonen or Jake Evans when he was there. Like, it's the whole team. It's the way they play.
What do you think of Dom Ducharme's answer to Sean's question today, Eric? I love Dom's entire Zoom session. I love the people thinking that he would be pacing around the room and going crazy and throwing sponge things at the television, where Dom is saying, I'm calm during the game. Like, he's coaching from his couch, so he has the ability to see the replays and things. I love that he trusts his coaches enough that, yes, he does make a connection to them between the periods, but he's not talking to them for 18 minutes and telling them, do this, do this, do this, do this, do that. I loved everything about that, but I'm curious for your thoughts on how he has been able to keep instilling the calm, and also the job that Richardson, Alex Burrows, and Sean Burke have done with Dom coaching essentially from the sidelines.
I don't want to discredit Dom or Luke or Burrows or Sean, but when you look down the bench and you have Corey Perry and Eric Stahl and Shea Weber and go down the list, Tyler Toffoli, Joel Edmondson, Ben Sherratt, Nick Suzuki, and Brendan Gallagher and Phil Deneau and Arturi Lehkonen, the bench runs itself. It's like the greatest satisfaction ever for a coach. But we're talking about guys that have just learned to play the right way, and that's how they've made it to where they are, and they bring everyone into the fight. So of all the teams to have kind of suffered this situation, and for Dom specifically, just feel horrendous. Although what Dom has shown in his time as Canadians coach is that he's very calm, very measured, very analytical, very smart. Luke is known for that. Luke is known for being Mr. Calm guy, not going to get in a guy's ear about a mistake he makes, bring him to the whiteboard after the period, show him, send him right back over the boards, give him a chance to feel confident. Like, that's Luke Richardson. But like, these two guys inherited a bench that is filled with just a litany of Stanley Cup winners, gold medal winners. Like, they just know what do we call Hockey Canada? The program of excellence. Like, that's what this bench is right now. So if any team had to go through something like this team was probably better suited for it than any other one, outside of the Lightning, I would say.
Sean and I talked about this a lot. I love the line in Winnipeg that Dom used. Why be nervous when you studied for the test? I mean, you can tell the guy prepared for this moment. Why the hell would I be nervous?
He took over his coach, by the way. That was his line when he took over as coach. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Ken was referring to, that when he first showed up in Winnipeg. I mean, I thought it was interesting, us working out of Winnipeg when he showed up. You and I had this conversation. I got a hold of you, Eric, because I was kind of blown away by it. Because at the time, Montreal was sinking like a stone in the standings. They'd lost so many games. You're thinking there's an urgency to turn this around. And in retrospect, there wasn't any urgency by Dominic Ducharme in that situation. He was very much handling that in a way that we have a list of things to do, and we're going to go about it the right way to start knocking things off that list. And what I talk about specifically is the Winnipeg Jets by that point had everything set up the way they wanted it to be set up. And how they handled their morning skates was they'd go out, get their hands going, their feet going, then they'd go off the ice. The Canadians were getting on the ice, and it was a practice session. And they had to do it because they were trying to teach things. And I asked Dominic Ducharme about it and thought, whether or not it put them at an advantage. And his answer to me, of course, I'm paraphrasing, was like, maybe, but we've got a place that we have to go. And this is the plan on how to get there. And it's funny because with them struggling throughout the year, I was starting to think they were adding too much onto that team's plate and they weren't figuring it out. But in retrospect, they got them right where they needed to go, right at the right time. And I'll say this about Kenny and I had this conversation on one of our Sportsnet sound-ons earlier today. The thing I loved about Dominic Ducharme when I asked him about that earlier today was you can tell, and you'll be able to speak on this, Eric, you can tell Dominic Ducharme doesn't hold himself as the captain of the ship and everyone else is a subordinate. You get that feeling that he stands shoulder to shoulder with all those coaches that you were talking about, Alex Burrows, Luke Richardson, Sean Burke, and that he's got an immense amount of respect for them, and that when he got, taken out of the situation, he had full confidence that the conversations and the communication that existed amongst that coaching group was so well oiled and they were so involved with each other and everyone knew kind of each other's job that's how you bring in Luke Richardson to run a bench that he's never run before at the NHL level. And that's how Sean Burke goes from being with Carey Price to running the defense, and it works. But the key part of that is they've coached this team so well, and he talked about that they're all acting on instinct right now. You're not having to, and you've talked about it, there's tweaks here and there. Cole Caulfield needs to be talked to every once in a while, and that's how we know that he learns so quickly. But for the most part, this team knows everything they're supposed to do out on the ice. So there's not that element of trying to figure this out as you go. The element is that the coaches have an idea of what they want to do. They put the players there with the absolute confidence that the players are going to execute when they get put out there. And what an absolute joy for those coaches to have that ability to have these players go do and execute exactly what plan you put them out there for.
Yeah, it's really well put. First of all, is it Ken's birthday?
No, sorry, that's a running for the fans from Montreal. It's a running joke. My birthday is March 25th, but I celebrate like every day is my birthday. So every day is a great day to be alive, a great day to talk about hockey, and it's a running joke in here. So there was an inside joke for one, and then the new folks are running with it, which is also fantastic. And we appreciate it.
it started early because you did actually have a birthday on Kenny and Renny.
It's
And I
true,
think people were
yes.
just surprised that you like came on, wanted to do that on your birthday. And then I think someone showed up on the next show and said, happy birthday. And then the chat room launched in and said, you're like a show late. You missed it. That was like last Tuesday or whatever. And then that person just kept saying happy birthday because he knew he was getting the reaction and it caught on. It was great. It was good stuff. Yeah.
You know what I find interesting, just Sean, just like about what you were asking me about just the well-oiled kind of machine that the Canadians have become and what they do. Like, there are not 1,800 ways to play hockey, right? Like, there are various systems that you can run, but the variety ends at about 3. Like, you can play a hard trap, a 1-4, you can play a 1-3-1, you could play a 2-3. But what's interesting to me is like the system that Ducharme chose for the Canadians is very much the Ken Hitchcock, Jacques Martin style of hockey. It's 5 guys in the picture at all times. Like that is the main tenet of what they're trying to do. Will they stretch the ice out? Rarely, but they'll do it in certain situations depending on who the personnel is on the ice. Everyone has gotten to know each other well enough, and that's interesting because there was 8 new guys that joined the team this year, and a couple more at the trade deadline, and Caulfield too. But I just find that Ducharme chose the right system for this group because one of the things he said early on in his tenure is the truth about this team. They don't have McDavid, they don't have Matthews, they don't have Scheifele, they don't have Pettersson. They cannot win without everybody pulling their weight, and that's what we're getting in these playoffs. Everyone is pulling their weight. So I just think to install a system where it depends on everyone being in the picture at all times, it's very fitting for what they need to do. The system fits with the personnel that they have. And it took a really long time for them to nail it down and for everyone to buy into it the right way so that it gets there. It took going down 3-1 against the Maple Leafs for it to shine through. But ever since then, it's like every game you watch it's the same thing, right? Like we're seeing the same game style every time they play. And I'll tell you, that's the one thing that I think gives the Canadians their best chance of winning this series against Tampa, who as you guys know, as I mentioned off the top, I picked to win the Stanley Cup. And I believe that they're the best team and that they were the best team all year and still standing. When I watched Tampa and New York, outside of the 8-0 game, most of the series was played on the Islanders' terms. And the Islanders were really close to beating them. And if most of this series gets played on Montreal's terms, which, judging on the last 3, they were all played on Montreal's terms, then the Canadians can beat them. And I think if you're a Canadians fan, if you start to see things look the same in terms of the style of game as the Canadians have been able to do through the last 3 series, you might be really happy by the end of it.
This is a question I've wanted to ask you since I've been here, and I don't know why I haven't asked you this yet, Eric, but Jeff Johnson says, how much did all of those days off at the end of the season set up the Habs run? I mean, this is part of it, but I guess I want to use that. Maybe that's a launching point for a question. Did that help? But also, to what do you or how do you explain the kind of flip of the switch that we saw from this Montreal Canadiens team? Because they backed into the playoffs with a loud beep, beep, beep. Like it was not looking good for them. When I was supposed to go at one point and take over the Calgary broadcasts, and I went there thinking like this is going to be, I'm going to be with the Calgary for 2 weeks while they limp their way to the end of the season. And it ended up being that it looked like if they could have made a push, they could have caught that Canadiens team. And then we go from that, a Montreal Canadiens team backing into the playoffs and I don't think they played bad in those first 4 games against the Toronto Maple Leafs, but at some point they got to their game. Luke Richardson says this team found itself. How did the Montreal Canadiens find themselves?
What was Carey Price's quote? I don't want to butcher it. What was Carey Price's quote to Kyle Bukauskas post Game 6? You guys remember?
I don't know. Can you paraphrase it for us? I was on. Okay. I missed it because I was on live in our show.
He said, I think Kyle asked him something to the effect of, "Is this not unbelievable?" And he said, "This is fully believable." That is at the heart of this. It's that as they went down 3-1, it was more of the same shit that we saw throughout the year, where they were just underperforming. Like, everyone in that room believed they had what it took. They are a tight room. They've been saying it all along. And it's not, as I kind of mentioned, and getting to know these guys quite well, and I've been around 14 different editions of this team, I can tell going back a couple of years that it was a really tight room. And with the guys that came in, there was no, you don't expect it to be a bad one. Sorry for the earmuffs, Rob.
It's a family show here. Family show.
But, well, whatever. Is shit still a swear word? Come on. We should be able to say it on the air.
I've got a mute button here, Eric. I'm not afraid to use it.
Yeah, I mean, come on. This is the Kenny and Renny show. This is not, Sportsnet Central.
Oh, Kenny and Renny after dark. Yeah.
But, no, this team, and Gallagher said it at the beginning of the playoffs, they've always believed in themselves. And I think, outside of Stahl and Perry getting up and what was relayed to the media that they said, you don't get chances like this and don't burn this. Look at us. We won Stanley Cups early in our first years and we hadn't been back since. And Perry last year and Stahl this year. I think some more things were said in that meeting. It's time to go. We have the team. We all believe in this team. Every single guy has got to step up and go here. And I think that's at the heart of it. It's not something tangible. It's not a gameplay kind of situation thing. Deno said everybody looked in the mirror and stepped up and played their game. Matt, you're 100% right. What Kerry said coming out of Game 4, that vote of confidence, the guys all watched and they all heard it. And it for it to come from him, the right guy to deliver that message, especially since he says so little, for him to say that publicly, I think, and it was so earnest and genuine, right? It wasn't a line that he pulled out to pull everyone out of the fire. He said, no, I know these guys. I believe in them. I believed in them. I face them in practice every day. I know they could score goals and I know they will. That was huge for sure. That's a confidence boost. But I just think someone lit a fire in that room. And I don't think it has anything to do with anything tactical or anything like that. I just think every guy, for whatever reason, started pulling on it. And you go to Game 5 against the Maple Leafs and they take a 3-0 lead and blow it and still manage to come through. Okay, that belief is reinforced, but it's still on the rocks a little bit. Game 6, they do the same thing, blow a lead, but come through. By the time we got to Game 7, though, that was the real point of the switch flipping, because I'll tell you, that Game 7 between Montreal and Toronto, there wasn't a single second watching that game that I didn't think the Canadiens were going to win. They were in charge of that entire game from cover to cover. And since then, we've seen the same exact game for them. We've seen it all the way through. Okay, I'll take the penalty for saying the S word. I'll never do it again. Sorry. But here in Quebec, we're a little more crass and crude. I'm sorry.
I think you touched on this a little bit, but was it Jesperi or was it Kotkaniemi? Oh, sorry, was it Kotkaniemi or was it Lehkonen who had pointed to the speech that Corey Perry stood up and gave? I mean, that was Game 4.
Kotkaniemi, yeah. So that was before Game 5 of the Toronto series, where it was just Perry just saying guys, I won the cup, in my second year in the NHL. I hadn't been back to the final since last year. Until last year, and here he is again. But it goes so fast, and it goes fast for me too. I'm watching guys that I covered. I'm watching their kids play hockey in the league now. I mean, it's and you guys are older than me, which I will remind everyone watching. You're both older than me.
Yeah, and Sean just had a birthday this week. It wasn't me having the birthday. Hey, Sean. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah, June 23rd. There you go.
We didn't celebrate with the show, but we were celebrating you nonetheless.
It was a lonely birthday.
Hey,
quick on you, Kenny.
Birthday with me and Yvonne Cornway. It was a pretty good birthday.
Pretty darn
well,
good.
That's true. That's true. I got an email from Yvonne Cornway afterwards where he said that he enjoyed himself and really liked the finished product. And if I should tell that story quickly, actually. Yvon Cornway was my dad's favorite hockey player. And so he'd always talk about the Roadrunner when I was young. And so, I mean, that's clearly before my time. And, but my dad was a Habs fan and versed me in the Habs. Anyways, my dad passed away 6 years ago. But this situation popped up where if you watched Game 6, the show opener, the opening kind of pump up video was Yvon Cornway. So I got a call and was asked to set it up, went and spent about an hour with Yvon Cornway, who was just phenomenal. Asked him every question. He was hilarious. I asked him who the best player he'd ever played against was, and he said, It was every goalie who ever stopped me. He said was the best player he ever played against. And I asked him about playing against Gordie Howe, and was he really as tough as everyone said? And he said, "Oh, I don't know. I never had any problem with him, but I was also short enough that he could never hit me with his elbows." So he was hilarious guy. Told me a bunch of really good stories. Just phenomenal to spend time with. And like I said, a gracious guy. Sent me an email the day after he saw it saying he really enjoyed himself, and that was phenomenal for my dad. I mean, that's it was neat because my dad would always talk about that kind of stuff. So yeah, that made it a really special birthday. And Eric, I went back to Bosa, the sandwich shop that you sent me to, and that made it pretty darn special, I got to say as well. At some point, I'm going to have to. Yeah, at some point I'm going to have to go through a long list of all the places that you sent me to, and we're already setting up stuff for the next round. I'm going to come home for a quick little kiss the wife and walk out the door kind of situation. It's I'm looking forward to the next round, and I think we may be traveling as well to potential. I don't want to jinx it, Eric, but I think that we may be on the road down to Tampa if. Yeah, keep the fingers crossed because we definitely want to be there in any game that the cup is handed out. Guys, is there anywhere you want to go before I shut this thing down?
Yeah, one last one. The other thing I loved about the Zoom was the Artturi Lehkonen quote. Eric, you would know this. Is he a Ric Flair fan, or was that an accidental quote? If you want to beat the best, you got to beat the best. I said the only way it would have been more perfect would be if he had finished it with whether you love it or you don't, whether you like it or you don't like it, you better learn to love it because it's the best thing going today. That would have been the only way that quote could have been any better.
Well, first of all, for anyone to say that Artturi Lehkonen delivered a good quote would be a first. The second thing is, and I love Artturi Lehkonen, but honestly, he is the worst quote possibly in the National Hockey League. But the funny thing about that quote this morning, and I was laughing, is so Artturi Lehkonen's father is Ika Lehkonen. His name is Isma, okay? And Artturi Lehkonen's father is like the polar opposite character-wise from Artturi Lehkonen. He is the most hysterical, boisterous, like very funny guy. He's a hockey coach in Finland, very well respected. Actually, an NHL commentator over in Finland, in Turku, where Saku Koivu's from. And he comes over to Montreal a couple times a year. And last time he came, we went out for drinks with him a few times. And last time he came in, he brought this famous Phaser Finnish chocolate bar for me, Arpin, a couple of different guys. And he's like, "You got to try this chocolate. It's the best chocolate in the world." Okay. So I write a message to Ika. We call him Ika. I write him a message after Game 6, after the Canadians after his son scores the winning goal and they eliminate the Golden Knights. And I said, "Man, fire up the private jet and get over to Montreal. What are you doing still over there?" And he's like, "Pandemic, I'm not coming. No chance." So he writes the last message he writes to me is he goes, "We have a saying in Finland, you got to beat the best to be the best." And then Artturi pulls out that line this morning. So I was laughing my ass off. Man, I got to curb the swearing. I'm sorry. I was asked a bad thing. Too bad.
None of it's bad. None of it's bad. When you drop that many pearls of wisdom, you can drop them however you want, Eric.
Yeah, I just think Lehkonen is a really good kid. He's very serious. To give you another sample of his dad and how funny he is, a year ago he came in, Lehkonen was playing great. He was playing really well, not scoring a lot. And I'm like, "Yo, your boy is playing really well." And he looks at me, he goes, "Needs to score more goals. He's not scoring enough. He needs to score more." I'm like, "Oh, well, we should tell him that." I also had an interaction with Lehkonen in the room. Now this is all coming back to me. I had an interaction with Arturi Lehkonen in the room. Like, I used to bust his chops a lot. Like, when he was a rookie/sophomore in training camp, he had like a couple great chances to score. I walked into the room, I'm like, when are you going to bury? Like, you got to bury that. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, just busting his chops. And Andrew Shaw one time saw me doing that and didn't realize that I was busting his chops. And like, he got really pissed at me. Like, he pulled me aside. He's like, you know how hard it is to score a goal in the NHL? And I was like, no, like, that's like a running joke that I have with Arturi. Like, we're good. And he's like, no, but like, you may think it's a joke, but like, you don't understand how hard it is to score in the NHL. And like, he's a young guy, and you shouldn't say stuff like that to him, because like, I hate that. Like, and I was just like, I'll never do it again, Andrew. It's all like, Andrew's a real character, and like, he was good like that. Like, it told me a lot about Andrew Shaw in terms of how much he cared about his teammates. And he loved Lehkonen. All the guys love Lehkonen. He's just a quiet kid who does everything the right way. And if you speak to the scouts, who are Hockey Reporter's best friends, every single one of them will tell you there are 31 teams and soon to be 32. So 31 other teams outside of Montreal that if Lehkonen was available, they would take him in a heartbeat. He just does everything the right way. So anyways, it's all roundabout about Lehkonen, but he's a good kid, and his dad's hysterical. And it was funny that he pulled out that line literally 2 hours after his dad sent me that message.
I think I saw a video of him on the penalty kill and just how dogged he is on the penalty kill with the caption, Arturi Lehkonen looks like he's fun to deal with on the power play, right? Because he's just on you left, right, and center. I was going to let it go, but this question came up a couple times, and let's tackle this. It's a good point to end on. Montreal Canadiens, 15th seed, 8th seed if you're breaking it down to two separate divisions, make it all the way to the Stanley Cup final. We've seen this play out before. A team like Dallas was in free fall last year before they went into the playoffs, before the COVID shutdown. They make it to the Stanley Cup final and then miss the playoffs the next year. Not every team can be the Tampa Bay Lightning, making it to the Stanley Cup final in 2015 and then, making it back, a couple times later and continuing to be a successful team. Eric, do you think this is the beginning of something special here in Montreal, especially with the youngsters that we talked about, the Caulfields, Kokkiniemis, and Suzuki's? Do you think this is the beginning of a Habs team that is going to be a perennial playoff threat?
Well, I'm going to give you a bit of a Jekyll Hyde answer here, because the answer is yes, and I'll tell you the reason why in a second, but I also think that they're going to be in tough to make the playoffs next year. And it's not just because of what they have in terms of their personnel. It's just like they're going back into a division with Tampa and Boston and Toronto and Ottawa and Florida, on the way up. And it's going to be tough. It's really going to be a tough haul. But the reason I say yes is because not just because, they have Suzuki and they have Kotkaniemi and they have Caulfield and they have Romanov and like, oh, great, look at who those guys are learning from right now. Like, look at who they're around and who they're learning from. That is going to take them to the next level. It's going to make them players that can carry a team moving forward. And, Marc Bergevin at the beginning of the year, when he made his bold statement about the Canadiens being here to win and meaning business and playing any style, one of the
there we go. He's back. Sorry, you were breaking up. Keep going.
Yeah, I was just saying one of the other things that Marc Bergevin said, because everyone got caught on him saying, we're here to win, we mean business, and we can play any style. What got lost was he also said that he wasn't all in. And he was right. Like, he didn't sacrifice his future whatsoever to build the team that he built this year. The Canadiens still have, I think it's 12 draft picks in this year, and that's after only the Detroit Red Wings have picked more players than them over the last 3. So, like, the foundation is there, but honestly, like, it's not just the players they have. It's the guys that they're around right now learning from. That is going to be so valuable down the stretch. And it's a lesson for every team in the NHL and all the fans who say tank and get the number 1 pick and this and that. If you tank and you get rid of the key veterans that you need to insulate these players coming up, you can have all the talent in the world. It doesn't matter. If it does not get raised the right way around the right people, it's going to go to waste. It's not going to be able to win for you. And I just think that is the best part about this run. And that it will be the best part about this run if the Canadiens win the Stanley Cup. But if they don't, at least all these kids have come up with the Corey Perrys and Shea Webbers and Stalls and go down the list. There's so many guys in this room. Like, that is going to make them a perennial challenger for the Stanley Cup.
Excellent stuff. Eric, so glad that you were able to join us here. We wanted to get you out in front of the people on your Twitter feed and put you out there to answer questions. People showed up in droves to do so. That's phenomenal. We want to thank, as we always do, our chat room, because they do such a good job at driving the conversation, making it fun to be in here. It's great stuff. We will continue doing this throughout the playoffs until it's all over here. We come on about, I don't know, Kenny, about an hour after the game. Eric,
hour and 15, yeah.
Eric and I had a chat earlier today. We're going to try and extend the shows and make them go a little longer, just to make sure Eric has time to show up if he wants to, if he can on those days, and give, again, the audience access to him so we can answer all the questions we want. Other than that, we just so much appreciate everyone coming along for the ride. The ride's going to continue, and we'd love you to continue on with us. That would be great. So thank you so much for coming, Eric. It's great. Kenny, great job. Any final words, gentlemen?
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know I'll be on Spit and Chicklets this week. I know a lot of people love that podcast, and it's going to be fun with those guys. A lot of Canadiens fans telling me I need to give it to the Wit Dog for ripping on the Habs nonstop, and I see the Biz Nasties on the bandwagon, so it's going to be fun. And guys, if you're out there, Ken and Sean, the job that these guys do, the dedication they have to what they do, to be doing this. This is Ken's off season right now with Winnipeg and how much he puts into that beat. And we are so lucky to have these guys at Sportsnet. It's what makes me the most proud to work at the company, to have people like you guys there. And I think Winnipeg fans are so well served. And I'm happy that Montreal fans are getting to know these two guys. And I see Sean's become kind of an adopted Montrealer. And I wish Ken was here along for the ride, doing this. And I can't wait till we're all in the same city again, covering the Habs and the Jets, playing each other over the next few years, because this is what it's all about. So this is fun. You guys have created something. It's awesome. And my birthday is only 7 days before Ken's. So there you go.
There we go.
We'll celebrate in March.
That means a ton coming
much
from
younger
you,
though. Much younger.
Means a ton coming from you, Eric.
Thank you, man.
Hey, you were on our very first ever episode of our Friday long form show of Kenny and Renny. I've just loved the opportunity to catch up with you. It's been absolutely great. It means a lot, those words coming from you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. The comment about the, hey, I love the Jets fans. The Montreal Canadiens fans have treated me great here. Out in that schmozzle of people, they've treated me absolutely great. It's been a lot of fun covering this run. I wanted to make sure I gave a shout out to the Jets Whiteout Street Party. I've never been involved in something that had the depth of that. I've never been in that big of a crowd before. I'll say this about the Montreal Canadiens crowd. I've never been involved in something with that level of passion before. The crowd here hits highs and stays at that high for a really long time. It's impressive. Ole, ole. These are people who can sing ole, ole, ole for like 7 hours straight at the top of their lungs. You got to give them credit for that intensity. And credit to, once again, our chat room that always brings the intensity. Absolutely love it. We will be back doing this after game one. Thank you so much for joining us. Eric, you the man. Ken, you the man. Thank you so much, everybody.